If you're going to write a book, it has to solve a problem, especially if you're going to write nonfiction. If people are going to read it, they have to be provided with value, and the way you provide value is you solve a problem. In this video, I'm going to talk all about how to determine what problem your book's going to solve, and then how to position your book so that your reader sees it as the solution to the problem that they feel inside and that they want to have a solution to. My name is Lane. This is Lane Sebring's channel. I'm so happy to have you with us today. If you want to go further into the topic of self-publishing, I want to put something in your hands. This is my free 5-step guide to writing a #1 best-selling book, which I've done. My first book was a #1 bestseller on Amazon. I learned a lot in the process, and I want to teach you how to do exactly that in 5 steps. It's totally free. You can find it at lanesebring.com/5 steps. All right, so let's get into the video for today. Every single nonfiction book, every single book really, has to solve a problem, because even if it's fiction and it's a story, the story has to have conflict. It has to have a problem. And from that, we learn a lot about nonfiction books as well. Because think about a movie. Think about a movie where the character starts out and he or she has no issues. And then they continue through the story and you watch this character have no problems, no issues. And then the story ends and they continue to have no issues and they sail off into the sunset. Well, guess what? That's not a book that you probably want to read. It's not interesting. There's nothing about it that keeps you involved and invested. The same thing is true if your book is just about something, if it's about a topic, but you're not addressing a felt need, a problem, an issue within that niche and in that topic, then your book's going to have a really hard time retaining readers and attracting new readers, because there's not really a point in reading it. And so how do you determine what problem your book is going to solve? Because think about this. Let's say that your book is about fitness, for example. And so it's just kind of a reference guide to fitness. That's not that interesting, all right? It's too broad. There's not enough, unless you're a directory or a dictionary or a glossary, you can't just be about a topic. But let's say that your book is about how to lose 60 pounds in 20 days while eating donuts. Albeit unrealistic, that's kind of interesting, right? Like, you solved a big problem. If you can solve that problem for people, then you really are on your way to something good. And it might kill them at the same time. Who knows? But the point is, you need to know specifically what problem your book is trying to solve and wanting to address. Because if you don't know the problem, then your end reader, there's no way they're going to know the problem and care about the solution. So one of the reasons why a problem is so important to have in a book is that a book should be designed to take people on a journey. Even nonfiction books that are information-based are still taking people on a journey where you build tension at the beginning of the book, and then you resolve that tension through the body of the book by showing them the answer or the solution to that problem. Then you equip the reader and you help them apply the solution at the end, or all throughout. Doesn't matter, but the point is it has to address a specific problem, and the best way to do that is to build tension around that problem so that your reader actually feels it and they have to know the solution. If you can do that, you can keep your reader hooked from the very start, and they're more likely to purchase your book and read it all the way through. So that begs the question, how do you determine the problem that your book's going to solve? I want to give you some simple steps that you can follow that make it super, super easy. The first thing you need to do is research your audience. Ask them what their biggest frustrations are regarding your topic. Now, if you want more information about this, I'll link to a video in the description about this exact thing. And that video is about, what if you have too many book ideas? How do you determine which book to write? In that video, we talk all about asking your audience what they're struggling with, what are their frustrations, as well as what are their goals and desires. If you do that and you can draw on that research of what their frustrations are, then it helps you to determine what are the common threads that you're starting to see. What are the common problems and issues that your people who follow you, whether that's on social media or your email list or your friends, the people that just, if you've built some kind of online presence with a blog or a YouTube channel or a podcast, you can start there. Or if you haven't done any of that stuff yet and you're just interested in writing a book and you're researching that, Ask the people around you, ask the people that you think might be interested in your topic, how they would be affected by whatever. And so say, hey, what are your common frustrations with your fitness goals? What's keeping you from reaching your fitness, if that's your niche, or if you're into something else? What are your common frustrations with gardening? What keeps you from seeing the kind of results that you want in your garden in the spring or the fall or whatever? You focus on your niche, ask the right people, and start to determine what are the frustrations. And then how is your book, or how could your book begin to solve or address those common frustrations? Once you have that down and you've defined the problem and it's crystal clear to you, in the process of your book, especially in the beginning, you need to do a few things with that problem and around that problem to really hook the reader and keep them engaged from the very start, all the way to the very end. And the first thing is you want to agitate the problem. Now, what I mean by this is that, especially in the very beginning of the book, you really want to address all the different frustrations that surround that problem. If you think about agitating something, if you agitate something, you're just kind of rubbing it, you're messing with it, ruffling it up, you're stirring it up. That's what you want to do with that problem. You want to make it as big of a deal as you can possibly make it. Now, you don't want to be hyperbolic to the point of insincerity, because people can see through that. But if this is a huge frustration and it's a big problem for a lot of people, you have to get your reader to feel it very early on in the book. So you want to agitate the problem. So in one of the books that I wrote, which was called Preaching Killer Sermons, the problem was unengaging, uncompelling, boring speaking. And so to agitate that problem, I actually spent the introduction and part of the first chapter actually defining what it looks like to put people to sleep when you preach. And so I went through and really agitated in 5 steps. Here's how to be super boring when you preach. What was I doing? I was showing through a little bit of parody and a little bit of satire, here's how to do it the wrong way. And then I showed how detrimental that is to our goals as preachers. And so for your niche, just think about what keeps your reader from getting what they want. What keeps your reader from achieving their goals? And then really work that problem, really agitate that problem, so that by the time you're through, they're going, I gotta have an answer to this issue. The next thing you want to do is you want to share your experience with the problem. And by the way, this doesn't have to happen in any particular order. You can start with your experience and then agitate it, just keep that in mind. But you want to make sure you do all of these things. So you're going to share your experience with the problem. So let's just say, going back to our fitness example, let's say that you have a book that's going to help people through all the maze and craziness of all the different diets and fad diets and eating plans. If your book's going to bring clarity to all that, you might start with your experience. Let's say that you lost 60 pounds, and unlike most people, you have actually kept all 60 pounds off for a long time, in 5-6 years or so. And so you want to say, look, here's the things that I did that really worked for me. But before you get to that, you want to share your experience with that actual problem. You want to talk about what it was like to be 60 pounds overweight. You want to talk about how that affected your health and how it affected your vibrance and how it affected your energy throughout the day and how it kept you from achieving some of your goals or whatever the problem was. Or if you're writing a book about finance, for example, and you want to help people to set a budget and to get out of debt and to plan for retirement and to invest and to buy real estate or whatever you're going to do, and maybe before you were broke, you can share your experience with that. One of the best examples of this is Dave Ramsey. He wrote a book called The Total Money Makeover, along with a lot of other books, but he always begins with his experience, and that was over leveraging, getting into way too much debt as a young real estate investor, and then losing it all when the banks called the notes, and the desperation he felt as a 26-year-old with a wife and a kid, feeling absolutely hopeless with nowhere to go and not knowing how things are going to turn out. He paints this picture. He even talks about one time, you remember being in the shower with it so hot, it was just scalding his face, bawling his eyes out, just crying and screaming because he didn't know what to do, just totally desperate. That paints a massive picture. That paints an impactful picture by sharing his experience. So then when he goes to agitate the problem, guess what? He can say, like I was saying, like you saw in my experience, it's so bad. Just think about, how do you, when you want to share a problem, if you've experienced it before yourself, how do you make sure that you convey that from your experience. So in my preaching, I always try to share times where I've made mistakes, where I've bored my audiences, where I have preached for way too long or didn't have anything relevant to say. All of those things I want to do to show that I'm not removed from this problem. This is something that I deal with, and it's something that all of us deal with, and then your reader is much more likely to latch on and want to hear more. Also, you can share other people's experience with a problem. So let's say you have a friend who lost a bunch of weight or went through financial strain or struggled with dealing with a special needs kid and then overcame it and developed a system for how to deal with it. Whatever the case, you want to share other people's experiences because that's powerful too. Just make sure that you either get permission or you obscure the details so that people don't know who you're talking about. That's something you want to make sure of. But by and large, you can tell just about anybody's story as long as you remove the names and obscure some of the defining details because you want to oust anybody. But the more you can share experience and shared experience around this problem and how it affected people, the better it's going to be for your book. So you're going to share your experience, you're going to agitate that problem, you're going to share other people's experience, you're going to show research related to the problem. Now, this is really effective. If you really want to convey how big of a deal this is and how important it is for people, for your reader to address this problem, it's so vital to say, look at this body of research that shows the result of this issue, right? That shows the result of chronic obesity, that shows the result of how many Americans are struggling in their finances, that shows the result of people who are leaving church every single day because it's unengaging. Whatever the case, you want to be able to show people, hey, it's not just my experience, and I'm not just sharing other people's experiences, I'm showing you the data that backs it all up. And so then when I agitate all that together and I pull it together and I say, look at this issue, it's far more compelling. Now, the last thing you need to do is you need to point to a need for a solution, right? So this is where your book is going to come in handy for the reader because you've spent all this time talking about how this problem has to be addressed and must be addressed. And if it's not addressed, it's going to be detrimental to the reader because of all these things. And here's how you've dealt with it. And here's how other people you know have dealt with it. And here's the research that shows how awful of a problem this is. Well, guess what? It needs to be solved. Who's going to solve it? Your book, right? The pages of your book are going to take the reader on a journey of unpacking how they can be empowered to solve this problem, to answer this question, to resolve this issue, and it's going to happen in your book. And believe me, when you do it that way, it makes your book so much more compelling because your reader is going, wow, this person gets me, this person gets the problem, this person understands the issue. I want to know what they have to say about how to make this better. Now, I do want to point out a few things. Number one, you want to be honest and truthful about the problem. You don't want to stretch it beyond what it really is. People can see right through that, and besides, it's just you want to do the right thing. You want to be honest in what you say about the problem. In most cases, if you're writing a book and you're addressing an issue, there's enough honest problems in there that you don't need to make stuff up. You don't need to be outlandish. You don't need to be hyperbolic. Just focus on what actually is the case, and especially if it's your experience, be honest about how you felt. Go back to that place that you were in before you were able to solve that problem, and just think about how frustrated you were and how angry and upset you were and how it made you so defeated to have to deal with this issue all the time. But then you eventually started to have a breakthrough, and that's where your book is going to shed some light that's really going to help people. So if you're honest from the start, then your book comes in with the solution. You're going to have an amazing, amazing book that people are going to want to read. So what other ways can you point to the problem that your book is going to solve? What did I miss? What are the best books that you've read that have really defined and outlined a problem and then solved it with the book in a meaningful way that provided value to you? I'd love to hear about that. If you've written a book like that, be sure to leave that in the comments and let us all go check it out. Again, thanks so much for watching. Go to lanesebring.com/5steps to pick up your guide. Be sure to subscribe to this channel if you want more videos on self-publishing, personal development, and online business. My name's Lane Sebring. I'm so happy to have you on this journey with me in these videos, and I will see you in the next one.